This is Brandon Griffin, aka the Realty Resource, and I am joined today by Kim West. I've got her information up on the screen, but Kim, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I'm Kim. I have a company called Navigating the Knot, which is spelled Knot, like tying the knot. And I'm a consultant and coach who specializes in the marriage and divorce process. So what that means is I provide clients nationwide with clarity and guidance on either end of marriage, from educating them on what they need to know before getting married to advising those who are approaching, going through, or looking to recover from divorce. I have a law degree from the University of Colorado and went through a rough divorce myself when I was 28. So I started my business a handful of years ago now as an act of really turning my pain into my purpose in order to help others navigate the divorce process and avoid making some of the same mistakes that I made.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really, really appreciate it.
No,
I
thanks for
was,
having me.
you're welcome. I had done a weekly update where I was going to mention a little bit about how we're going to stop talking about houses for once and talk a little bit about the thing inside, which is the people. But I think, bringing you on right now, aside from, just I enjoy your company and I love to hear your insight on this kind of stuff. I think it's very relevant. I know a lot of folks are able to return to work here this week,
Yeah.
but many aren't, and some things are still extended. There's definitely still a lot of pressure on couples at home, especially with kids and all those kind of things. So
For
um,
sure.
it makes sense that divorce rates are going up and relationships are having issues. And so I think, like I said, a house is not a home without the people in it. So I thought we'd talk to you and just kind of gain some insight about what it is that you're doing to help people and what suggestions you might have.
Sure. Yeah, a lot's going on. And as you said, yeah, people are starting to go back to work or have maybe more of their old routine. But that said, I think the unemployment rate right now, I want to say it's jumped up. It's been pretty
No,
high to the point of
it's
15% or
it's up
so
there.
or more. So that said, I mean, not everyone is going to be going back to work. And I think it's pretty common knowledge, but unfortunately, one of the biggest sort of points of conflict in a marriage is financial. When it comes to
Mhm,
money, financial conversations, once there is that stressor,
mhm.
depending on everyone's money mindset and their background with finances, that can be a really big strain on a marriage. On top of, not to mention, obviously, the stresses of this pandemic, of perhaps
Yeah.
having kids at home, homeschooling, trying
Mhm.
to work remotely while managing kids, and just trying to keep your sanity in close quarters and have all the supplies you need. So there's a lot being put on people from a stress perspective right now, even if they aren't married, even if they're just partnered up. So that's
Mhm.
a lot to handle. And there isn't a one size fits all
Yeah.
response, answer to kind of making it work.
Yeah.
That said, I do have some tips that I can give, certainly, if you'd like me to kind of go into that in terms of ways to perhaps mitigate conflict
Yeah.
with your partner at home, or I can certainly speak also to people who are unfortunately going through a divorce,
Yeah.
and what they're handling right now, because they're all in very different circumstances.
Absolutely. So since we are live, I'll go ahead and take advantage of the fact that if anyone's here and has a question for Kim, I'm going to throw this banner up here. If you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the comments. And even if we don't get to them right now, if you're not able to tune in during the lunch hour, then this will go up on my Facebook page. And any comments that you have, we stay in contact so we can make sure that we get those answered. And again,
Yeah.
Kim's contact info is in the description for this, and we'll make sure that you guys can get linked up. But I do think that's a good place to start, though. Exactly what you just said is, any tips on maintaining healthy relationships while in quarantine or close proximity or in a pandemic?
Yeah, definitely. I think we can all benefit from that. Even if we're not in close proximity with anyone, there is conflict that is often getting spiked with family members or maybe friends who are operating out there in a different way than maybe you feel is responsible. There are just all sorts of points of conflict right now for relationships. So, in terms of helping to manage conflict, the main thing that I always advise my clients especially during this time, is really just that you can't control others. Um, no matter how much we want to, and
Not even my 7 month
especially,
old.
right?
I'm stronger than
Uh,
he is.
yeah, especially, I have clients who are co-parenting right now.
Mhm.
So they're going through a divorce, but sharing parental responsibilities with their
Mhm.
ex or soon to be ex. And it's even in those situations, as much as you might want to control that other person because they're taking care of your child or children, you just can't. So what I really try to advise my clients to do is to really take a step back and focus on what you can do right now to improve and grow. So
Mhm.
really flip your focus, flip your lens, and look internally at anything that you can do. So, how can you cultivate greater empathy
Mhm.
and let go of expectations or control with respect to those around you? So that might mean, looking at your partner's situation, whatever that might be. Are they out of work? Are they working but busier than ever because their industry is heavily impacted by all of this?
Mhm.
Are they stressed about losing their job? Or are they overwhelmed with just all of this, the stress of the pandemic? Maybe a family member, a parent is sick. Maybe they're afraid of getting sick. There's so many different things right now that can be spinning around and just spiking our stress levels.
Mhm.
And when that happens, we're just so much more easily triggered by others and by our environment. So it doesn't really tend to bring out the best in ourselves. So for that reason, empathy is so important. I think it might be the most important tool to sort of work on cultivating during this period of time. So definitely try to approach others with empathy, and
Mhm.
even maybe set a common ground when approaching a conversation with them. Like say something like, I know this is a really tough time right now. I know that this is
Mhm.
unprecedented. We don't really know what we're doing. We're
Yeah.
all kind of in this together from that perspective, so that you can kind of approach conversations from a place of a team base,
Yeah.
even if you are, getting divorced. You
Yeah.
want to try to find that common ground and express empathy or
Mhm.
express appreciation if they're
Yeah.
doing anything that is benefiting you, your kids, whatever.
Mhm.
um, just another tip is, how can you drop into deeper patience, trust, or faith? This kind of goes to, if you have a meditation practice, if you have any sort of mindfulness practice that you go through,
Mhm.
even if you don't, just taking a moment whenever you feel triggered. One, it's always okay to take some space for yourself. So I
Mhm.
definitely recommend doing that, and also communicating it, just so people don't think you're storming out or avoiding the situation. Just explain calmly, like, I'm really sorry. I need to take a moment. I need to take some space, maybe just like 5 to 10 minutes, and go do that. Find a room. Hopefully, you're not just in a single, studio apartment during this.
Yeah.
But if you can find a safe space for yourself, or even sit in your car. I've had clients do that before, um, and just breathe. Like just breathe, maybe listen to some like favorite music, some upbeat music, if that helps you.
Yeah.
And if you are into meditation, mindfulness, any sort of slow body movement like yoga can be helpful. But yeah, just trying to find a way to really tap into patience, trust, faith,
Mhm.
kind of spiking more into that parasympathetic nervous system, can be really helpful. And just one more tip on all of that
Yeah.
front of conflict during quarantine. Um, I would say, how can you move through this period in a way that you'll be proud of one day, when looking back on it? So what are some things, what are some practices that you would like to hone? What are some good habits that you might want to try to set for yourself? Because, we're spending more time than ever at home.
Yeah.
And while that's different perhaps than, your natural state of things, it can also be a good opportunity, to kind of train your brain to have a little more self-discipline,
Mhm.
or to just get in some new habits that you've always wanted to bring in and enter into your world.
Yeah.
So those are just some tips. But yeah, obviously everyone has, a different set of circumstances that they're working under. And so I'm happy also to answer specific questions if there anything that comes through.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me check on that really quick. Okay, no comments yet.
Sure.
Um,
No
but
problem.
we'll catch these afterwards. So
Yeah,
related to some of the stuff you were just mentioning, I mean, I think those are all great tips, and thank you for sharing them. I
for sure.
smile when I recognize the an opportunity within myself to be more mindful or to to practice those things that you just mentioned better. So it's I think
Sure.
a constant struggle for everybody, and even those that are on top of it. I feel like there's the people that are taking this this time as a break. They're welcoming it. They're grateful. They're working
Yeah.
on all these things they've never done before. And then there's some folks like that are just maybe putting on the COVID-19 and kind of gave up on everything for a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
Related to that, if those folks are stuck in the same home together, and how do you think couples would approach the conversation of maybe one person has lost a job and the other, or been
Mm,
furloughed, and the other is continuing to try to work and doing everything they can do. It's technology is a beautiful thing, and I think we're going to come out of this with some new leverage and some new understanding that we can be more connected from far apart. But it also creates a
yeah.
lot of friction, a lot of frustration. So if there's one person in a couple that's dealing with having to adjust to working remotely and the other is
Yeah.
basically unemployed at the moment, like how do you suggest facilitating conversations where it's like, hey, you know what, like I'm working all day, you need to take care of the kids, or like get off your ass
Yeah.
and do something.
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely a very sensitive topic
Oh, by
and
the way,
on top
I'm
of
not asking for myself, by the way. My wife is.
no.
I probably should
Yeah,
say that because
I know.
most people don't know me. So my wife's a nurse. She's amazing. Thank God for them.
I I often have people who I'm
Good
chatting with,
girlfriend.
colleagues and friends who have to add disclaimers. Like if they're sharing my contact details with their audience, they're like, by the way,
I am
my
perfectly
marriage
happy. Yeah.
my marriage is strong, we're all good. Yeah, love the disclaimer. Yeah, so definitely if one, obviously it's a very sensitive time, stresses are high, and on top of that, if one member of a given couple has lost their job,
Mhm.
yes, it's going to add so much more strain and complication to the situation. So it sounds like the dynamic you're kind of teeing up is a couple is at home, perhaps has kids together, one
Mhm.
person is working fully remotely and the other has lost their job. Is that correct?
Yeah, just for sake of example, like I said, I think that
Sure.
if I had to, when I heard that divorce rates and even domestic violence rates are spiking, I think,
Yeah.
I was just trying to think about there's this perfect storm that's going on in a lot of these households as people are locked down. And I think that might be, just the culmination of all of those things that you mentioned earlier.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And the domestic violence stat is very real. There are a lot of resources out there for people right now, but I definitely turn to those if they are, if that is a situation that's arising,
Mm-hmm.
because that is not something that I want to advise on or speak to directly, just
Yeah.
because that is a very sensitive area that can have some obviously very serious implications. So I would really encourage people to reach out and direct themselves to resources that exist surrounding that right now.
Okay.
And I'm happy to point you to those at the end if needed.
That's it. I've got
But
that
yeah,
queued up. You read my mind.
great. Yeah. But yeah, so given the dynamic that you've sort of set, what I'd recommend, one again is going back to empathy. Both people in that situation are going to be experiencing some unique stress and difficulty. The person, so wearing the opposite person's hat and trying to
Mhm.
look at things from their perspective and just being aware of what they're experiencing is going to be really important,
Yeah.
in terms of just recognizing their emotions and what they might be struggling with. Because it'll allow you to have more empathy and understanding for how they might be approaching things, or why they might be acting the way they're acting. And so on the job loss front, obviously you might be feeling insecure. You might be feeling, a lot of just guilt or shame, especially if you have kids and you feel like it's your job to be a provider, an economic provider for your family. You might feel stress and pressure to find something new. or to try to collect unemployment, or any of these grants that are coming out,
Yeah.
stimulus opportunities. There's just a lot of new information, so it can be difficult to sort of stay on top of it.
Mhm.
And take that responsibility.
Yeah.
You might be kind of frantically job hunting. I mean, there are all sorts of different things that could be on your plate. And
Mhm.
in addition, yeah, if you have kids, if you have a spouse who's trying to work from home and be respectful of their space during this time, it's
Yeah.
a lot. So they are dealing certainly with a lot of stress, a lot of pain, a lot of difficult, heavy emotions.
Mhm.
What I would recommend for that person, and then I'll sort of flip the script and look at the other. What I'd recommend for them is, one, you're experiencing a loss. So acknowledge that, like
Mhm.
recognize that you have experienced a loss. And you'd be surprised. I mean, you could actually blow this out and look at the pandemic as a whole.
Mhm.
And people are going through grief, whether
Yeah.
or not they realize they are.
Yeah.
hence the 5 stages of grief, and denial, being one of those front and center. But we are all experiencing loss through this, whether that is on the real level of, loss of friends or family due to illness or due to other reasons, but actual death. We're dealing with loss of jobs. We're dealing with loss of life as we knew it, our daily habits and routines. We're also dealing with loss of things that we had planned. I've
Yeah.
had 3 friends have to either reschedule, postpone, or cancel, weddings that I was supposed to go to this year. And so my heart goes out to all of those people who are experiencing, massive loss right now.
Yeah.
So
Speaking
as
of,
I said, yeah,
pause for a second. We got a comment.
yeah.
Someone who loves either one of our videos. It's their birthday. Speaking of loss and loss of celebration,
Aw,
and they were
yeah,
wanting us to wish them happy birthday. So, is it
yeah.
Frida? Frida Sloss? Happy birthday.
Aw, happy
Yeah.
birthday, Frida.
Hopefully, you don't have to experience as much loss around your birthday.
I know, I know. My father, brother, and my sisters is coming up. Have all had birthdays during this time, and yeah, we tried to do some group, family Zoom calls, which was fun, and like do little celebrations remotely. But it's so tough. It's so tough.
Yeah.
So I hope that you can do something fun, maybe after the fact, like plan on a celebration in a month or two, where you can actually get hugs and presents and all the good stuff.
Absolutely. So,
um,
sorry about that. That was totally. I
that's
just
okay.
saw the perfect
No,
little segue.
yeah, definitely. No, want to acknowledge her. So yeah, so acknowledging really the grief, and the loss that you're experiencing is important. You don't want to try to suffocate it or stifle it, because it's going to come out in other ways. You might have blow ups, you might be edgy, you might, snap. So
Mhm.
please try to, as much as possible, acknowledge that loss and go through the grief process, because you are entitled to that. Some things that can sometimes help with that are going back to the meditation, breathing, sometimes journaling, just venting your
Mhm.
emotions on a
Mhm.
page can be helpful, because then you can sort of get them all out and then close the notebook and put it
Yeah.
away. And it allows you to compartmentalize, a little more, I guess, effectively,
Yeah.
than otherwise.
Huh.
So those are just some suggestions, for that person going through the grief. The other thing is communication.
Mhm.
Maybe talking to your partner and really getting a lay of the land in terms of what are some goals that you maybe have in terms of, um, mutual expectations. Like when are you going to be starting your job search process again? Are you going to be relying
Mhm.
on unemployment for a little while? Do you have any thoughts around how to get a new job? Just where are things with that? Do you have a plan to go to job fairs, or start networking? You can network virtually right now.
Mhm.
That isn't to say I want to put that on them necessarily, depending
Mhm.
on their situation, but there are a lot of really great networking opportunities. Again, I'm happy to share what I know of, for the record, after our
Okay.
chat.
That'd be great.
If there are any groups that people would like to know about. But yeah, there are some things that you can do right now, but you want to have that conversation with your partner so that you understand, how you're each feeling about things, and maybe just have one ask each day of each other. So sit down, have like a little summit in the morning with your partner for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Mhm.
And I think that it can always be great to start with an acknowledgement. So start with an acknowledgement that you each have for each other. Like, thank you for doing this, or I appreciate that you are this way, or that you have this skill set, or that you're so good with the kids. And then maybe have an ask like, I could really use your support with this today.
Yeah.
And just be clear, be concrete. Don't let it turn into like a huge list. Don't let it
Yeah.
bleed, into a long laundry list of things. But if you can just be clear and have maybe one ask per day during this pandemic, I think that, and have it be reciprocal.
Yeah.
I think that that can be helpful, and create
I like that.
space for people. Yeah, and then to focus on the person who's working remotely, and possibly also, yeah, dealing with kids. I think that boundary setting is really important, and we aren't always great at that because we don't always have to do it. We
Yeah.
often have, the luxury of leaving and going to an office environment and having these certain routines and expectations associated with that environment. So when you're at home and dealing with these unknowns and packages getting delivered and dogs barking and kids running around with various pieces of clothing off or on,
Yeah.
it's just crazy. And so you really can't predict as much, but what you can do is you can communicate to your partner. I have a podcast interview, or I have this, or I'm
Mhm.
interviewing someone, I'm speaking with this person, or I'm on Zoom video calls like from X hour to X hour. And I
Mhm.
really could use your support in like trying to manage the craziness, like, and the noise, during this time.
Mhm. Absolutely.
There's certain apps and things you can find also that help with kind of noise canceling, for background noise. But that said, I think that people are pretty understanding right now during
Yeah.
this time that we're all in a very weird situation. And
I would say that
um,
for that,
yeah.
in
Hmm.
that respect, it's actually kind of, I think there's a certain authenticity, and like you get to see like the genuine. I don't know. I feel like I've been getting to know people on a deeper level, just seeing like
Yeah.
one side of their home, being around them, or
Yeah.
their families. Like Stephen
Hmm.
Colbert. I love that guy to begin with, and now I love him even more because I know his dog and his wife and his son.
Totally. And John Krasinski doing
Yeah.
some
Oh
good
yeah.
news.
It's on my
It's
channel,
great.
man. I
Yeah,
even said I want to be everybody's John Krasinski of real estate. If I could do that,
completely. Yes.
that's my new mission statement.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, because, well, as in your role, you just have this unique opportunity to be such a resource for your clients,
Yeah,
and to be able to find, yeah, whatever person they might need to kind of best shepherd them through the situation. And you're
yeah,
sort of right in the middle of that, so you're in a really wonderful, like, uniquely qualified position to be an incredible resource.
yeah. Well, right back at you, and thank you. Um, let's transition into. So we've been talking a little bit about just general maintaining healthy relationships, in quarantine,
Hmm.
communication and empathy, and all that's great. Like even if you're not
Yeah.
having issues, implementing any of the things that Kim just talked about, I think is huge. To really maintaining a happy and healthy home through this,
Yeah.
and strengthening those relationships, and taking this opportunity and all that time to make things better and not rub on each other's nerves or whatever. I don't know,
Yeah.
combining two things there. But maybe you can just give us a couple quick co-parenting tips, because I think that's
Hmm.
again, right now a lot of people are actually being able to go safely back to work, and kind of get out of the house a little bit. So the cabin fever maybe hopefully is breaking up a little bit, but we still got the
Sure.
rugrats running around in most of these households until the schools figure out what they can do about this. So what do you
Yeah.
what do you have for people there?
Sure. So let's see. Well, one, obviously, again, with the empathy, I
Yeah.
think that if you approach the start of a conversation with your co-parent by level setting and saying something neutral to the effect of, we're in this together. I know this is a really weird situation or tough time, or I know that your schedule is particularly chaotic right now.
Mhm.
Just having that initial, level setting, I think, can be beneficial so that you're not reaching out and immediately triggering them,
Mhm.
and vice versa. So it goes both ways, but I think that empathy is really key. Another tip is over communicate. This is going to be tough, and some people might personally take issue with this, which I understand. And this is just my tip.
Mhm.
But basically, some co-parents really don't like to talk to each other. They'll actually sort of try to communicate through their kids. And especially right now during the pandemic, it's just so important that you are communicating with one another, that you're clear on, what your timing is going to look like, how your handoffs are going to work, how you're going to be keeping yourselves healthy and safe, and also your kids healthy and safe. What sort of rules are you wanting to set? Perhaps as co-parents, perhaps in your respective households, you may not be on the same page with how you are choosing to, structure your kids' days, for instance.
Mhm.
Um, a big tip that I always recommend for co-parents, but especially right now during the pandemic,
Mhm.
is what neutral resources can you point to, as sort of, I guess, is just go-tos. So for instance, you might say that, your kid's teacher, if they're being taught virtually right now over Zoom, you might point to the kid's teacher and say, Bobby's teacher wants XYZ, and have
Mhm.
them as sort of a neutral, objective third party that you're pointing to, as opposed to saying like, he needs to do XYZ, and it sounds like it's coming from you.
Yeah.
If you have that neutral third party source, it can help ease tensions.
Mhm.
So similarly, you can point with health and safety. I think right now as a
Yeah.
co-parent, health and safety of your kids is the most important thing.
Mhm.
So to the extent possible, really try to keep that in mind and note that that should be the priority. And even
Yeah.
though I know you're stressed about education probably right now, and are your kids falling behind, and how are we managing that? But really what matters the most is their health and safety. So in the vein of
Mhm.
choosing your battles, try to prioritize that over anything else. Um, but yeah, and so going back to what I was saying about a neutral third party, you can
Mhm.
point to CDC recommendations, you can point to the WHO, you can point to all these different websites, that are the sort of authority that we have to work with right now. And
Yeah.
they can set your guidelines for, for how you're approaching things. So you can reach out to your co-parent and say, I'm not sure necessarily what the best approach is right now. Like, this is so uncharted territory. However,
Yeah.
these guidelines are what I'm following because they seem to be, the best resource, that I'm seeing out there. And you can do that even outside of the pandemic for
Mhm.
screen time.
Yeah.
Parents tend to disagree about how much screen time their kids should get.
Mhm.
There are various regulations out there on different websites. Yeah. So I think the Mayo Clinic has also a pediatric section that has regulations. Anyway, so I would definitely point to neutral resources whenever possible to try to minimize conflict,
Mhm.
and hopefully avoid triggering, one
Yeah.
person or the other.
No, I think that's a great tip. And those two together too, disinterested third party, that's a negotiation tactic we use all the time in real estate. So
Right.
it's funny because having a 7 month old, really, we're just trying to get everything
Mhm.
figured out at the moment. But I've been theorizing
Yeah.
about how I'm going to go ahead and, do things like discipline or explain things like if right now he was out trying to hang out with his friends, but he couldn't,
Hmm.
I could see, one of those things being like, well, especially when you play good cop, bad cop, too often that could be like, well, your mom said no, you can't do that. But I like the idea of trying to explain to them the context surrounding it. And who knows, younger kids might not get who the CDC are or who the World
Right.
Health Organization is. But maybe we should create like some. It's like the boogeyman will come out of your closet and get you if you don't stay in bed. Well, who will come get you if you go out and play with your friends? Like, I don't know. I think there's gonna be some new things created. I'm just weird in thinking that.
No,
I'm just playing around.
well, I
But
mean,
anyway,
to the
good.
point of over communication, I do think it is wise to also be communicating with your kids, because when they don't have information, they're afraid. They know that something's going on. They know that things are abnormal, but
Yeah,
they don't, if you're not providing them with information and kind of empowering them, they're going to be more in the dark and more liable to act out in other ways. So it's also important to, depending on their age, obviously temper how much you're telling them so you're not giving them an anxiety complex, making them completely neurotic. But
Absolutely.
it is important to set rules to say, you can't go to the playground right now. You can't, see your friends right now outside of, Zoom play dates or whatever, whatever your rules are.
Hmm.
Just make sure you're communicating those to your kids and explaining why. Just saying
Hmm.
that, there's a lot of people are getting sick, and you just want to be safe and be cautious to hopefully keep everybody safer.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I want to wrap up
Yeah.
though by hitting, where to go, what to do if people want help, either with
Yeah.
relationship disputes. And I know you're going to be too humble to mention what you've been doing in the community or in creating communities of support. So I'll do that for you.
Aw, thank you.
Kim is hosting, leveraging technology to host virtual meetings and creating safe spaces for people to go and just have conversations and be a part of a place where they can go and just, I guess, be themselves and air their grievances and all their concerns and their fears and, be supported, maybe in a situation where they're not feeling supported at home or they don't know how to find that. And so I really want to thank you for doing that, because I know you're doing that as a free service and just taking advantage of the time that we all have right now as we're separated to really, put to pour into one another and to, to hold each other up, even though we can't even literally touch each other. So thank you for doing that,
Definitely.
first of all. The other thing I
Oh
want to say
no.
too is we'll be sure to take all the resources that you've talked about and link them in the description as well.
Great. Yeah,
But
that'd be
yeah,
perfect.
just kind of want to end on this little thought, like anything you want to add to, where to go or what to do if someone's seeking help.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, you're not alone, first and foremost. You might feel very alone. I know that I felt incredibly isolated when I was going through my own divorce. But there are people out there who care, and we're here for you.
Mhm.
So please don't feel alone. In terms of where you can go, I offer free consultations. So please never hesitate to reach out and book some time with me if you'd like to chat.
Mhm.
And even if you aren't necessarily interested in working with me, I take no personal offense. I love to be of service and help
Mhm.
people, especially during this time,
Yeah.
because it is so difficult. And so, with that said, I have I'm blessed with a robust network of providers, really nationwide. And would love to be able to point you in the right direction if you need help, whether that is, an attorney, whether that's a
Mhm.
mediator, whether that's a therapist, child psychologist,
Yeah.
financial, I just have so many resources that I can help point you to. So I'm always happy to do that. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Yes, as Brandon mentioned, I'm doing free community calls basically for anyone contemplating in the midst of or post divorce, looking to recover from divorce, every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Mountain. And so feel free, if you'd like that information, reach out to me and I can share that Zoom link with you. Those calls are completely free. I try to share some sort of educational topic akin to what we've been talking about today,
Awesome.
along these lines. And then I just open it up for questions. So safe space to commune, to feel supported, to get advice from one another, because we're in this together, and connection and community are just so paramount.
Yeah.
Especially right now.
Absolutely. Yep. I think it's more important now than ever. And I think it's one of those things we took for granted when we were,
Yeah.
together physically. And
Yeah.
we can recreate it. It's just, it takes intention, certainly. Um,
Definitely.
yeah. So I just want to thank you so much for taking some time today out of
Thanks for
lunch
having
and
me.
joining me and talking a little bit about, again, what makes a house a home is the relationships inside of it. So,
Yeah.
take this opportunity to strengthen them, and if they're weak, figure out a way to bolster them, and work on yourself. And Kim's here to help, and I'm here if you need a new house to do that in.
Definitely, yes. Well, thank you so much, Brandon. It was great to get to chat with you.
Yeah, you are very welcome, and have a good rest of your day. And I'm
You
gonna
as
jump on those
well.
calls. That's all great info.
All right.
Have a good
Excellent.
one.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for watching this video. This has been Brandon Griffin, aka The Realty Resource. If you can help us out by liking, subscribing, following, and if you want our weekly updates for anything real estate related, go ahead and hit that notification bell. Also, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments below and we'll go ahead and answer them for you. Have a good one.